Everywhere you look on the internet, there are videos and articles about the top stocks to invest in the metaverse. But which ones should you choose, and where do you even start? Well, if you can't or don't want to choose, then you can invest in Roundhill Investments Metaverse ETF. And as the only Metaverse ETF available at the moment, this ETF, called META, is getting a lot of attention. The META ETF is a good way to diversify your exposure to the potential Metaverse-related companies, so that in the long term, if some of them succeed and some of them fail, you don't have all the risk in one or only a few baskets. But the downside to the META ETF is that the expense ratio is 0.75%. This means that 0.75% of your investment will be deducted annually as fees every year. A typical ETF expense ratio is less than 1%, so 0.75% is reasonable. But as an example, if you invest $10,000 and if your investment goes up by 10% every year, then 5 years later, your investment would be worth around $14,600, and your total expenses over the 5 years would be around $460. So over time, the expense ratio does add up. But the ETF fees is the price you pay for diversifying your Metaverse portfolio, so it can be a good trade-off if you want to just set it and forget it for the long-term time horizon. But for those who are opposed to paying the expense ratio, or feel that they don't agree with every company in the ETF to have potential to grow in the Metaverse world, then you can analyze and select the stocks for yourself. So in today's video, I compiled a list of all the stocks that are in the META ETF along with any other Metaverse-related companies that are not in the ETF, and looked at which stocks have the best analyst consensus right now, and which companies have had activities related to the Metaverse. How to pick your own Metaverse stock. The first thing to do when picking your own Metaverse stock is to identify which companies are developing and investing for the future Metaverse. In order to do that, it's helpful to categorize activities related to building the Metaverse. According to Roundhill Investments, the categories they use are compute, which are companies enabling and supply of computing power to support the Metaverse; networking, which are companies providing real-time connections, high bandwidth, and data services to consumers; virtual platforms and infrastructure, companies developing and operating immersive digital and often three-dimensional simulations, environments, and worlds wherein users and businesses can explore, create, socialize, and participate in a wide variety of experiences; interchange standards, companies building tools, protocols, formats, services, and engines which serve as actual or de facto standards for interoperability and enable the creation, operation, and ongoing improvements to the Metaverse. Payments, the support of digital payment processes and operations, which includes fiat on-ramps to pure-play digital currencies and financial services; content, assets, and identity services, the design, creation, sale, resale, storage, secure protection, and financial management of digital assets, such as virtual goods and currencies, as connected to user data and identity; and finally, hardware, the sale and support of physical technologies and devices used to access, interact with, or develop the Metaverse. If there are companies that are not currently in the META ETF holdings, but are engaged in any of the above activities related to the Metaverse, then we should add those companies. For example, Vuzix builds hardware for AR and VR, and they are not in the holding, so we should add Vuzix. After making this list, the next thing we did was to narrow down the list by identifying the companies that are currently undervalued. First, it's important to understand that the Metaverse is not going to be built immediately, and it is going to take years. So the companies that you invest in now will most likely go through market cycles, and their prices won't skyrocket in the near term. So knowing which companies are currently undervalued or overvalued gives you a good sense of whether now is the time to buy the stock, or if you should wait until there's a better price opportunity for that stock. In order to see if a company is overvalued or undervalued, we should perform fundamental analysis on every company. But since we have 40 plus companies, we're relying on analyst consensus as a proxy. Analyst consensus rating and target price are based on analysts' fundamental analysis of the company. So we compared the latest closing price to the average analyst consensus target price to determine which companies have the biggest gap right now. Here is a list of all the Metaverse-related companies in the META ETF and additional ones that we added. The companies are put into categories, and we slightly modified the categories that Roundhill Investment uses, which we mentioned earlier. The categories we used are computing and processing, infrastructure, which includes networking, data storage, cybersecurity, and other, virtual simulation platforms, or software developer that allows others to build platforms or can be used to build platforms on, payments, content creation and digital asset services, and hardware. Note that we used best fit to categorize each company based on their primary function to build the metaverse, but this is our own judgment and may not agree with other people's. We always highly encourage people to be active in the comments, but please be respectful to everyone's opinions when you're giving your own. Of these companies, the top analyst consensus rated companies by category are, and from this list, these companies were filtered further for these two characteristics. They have the highest difference between analyst consensus target price and the last closing price as of November 26th, 2021. And their trading multiples are not crazy overvalued compared to their peers or historically. To recap, we first started with the list of all the Metaverse companies in the META ETF and added more Metaverse-related companies not currently held in the ETF. We categorized them into different primary functions to build the Metaverse. Then we filtered for the companies that have the top ratings by analysts and are currently not super overvalued, which can be a good opportunity. And in the next video, we will talk more about each of these top Metaverse companies and what they're doing now to build the Metaverse, in order to get some sense of their potential in becoming a significant player in the Metaverse. I hope this has been helpful. I think it's important to know how to pick your own Metaverse stocks. And as always, this is not financial advice, so you should always do your own research once you identify the companies you want to invest in. Thanks for watching.